A couple of months ago, my fiance and I moved into her childhood home in Mobile, Alabama to renovate and get ready to sell at the end of the year before we move over to the UK. So I packed up my studio in Atlanta to get ready for building out a new studio room in the house. Almost immediately after moving in, I had a few sessions come in that I needed to turn around some drum tracks pretty quickly, so I set up my drums in the room just to get a feel for the room and did some quick recording. The room didn't sound too bad, but there were definitely a few things that I wanted to do with the room to make it more recording friendly. So we first painted the walls and ripped out the carpet in order to install some new wood flooring. The room is about 13 feet deep by 12 feet wide, so it's about the same size as the studio that I had in Atlanta, which was about 15 feet by 11 feet. Having the ability to change basically anything in the room gave me a little more flexibility. So this involved a lot of cutting the floorboards to make sure that they fit properly with the room. But I'm really happy with the result, and just between the painting and the flooring, I think it looks a lot better already. The main difference between this studio and my old one is that I now have my studio desk in the same room, which is a bit more convenient. I did want to treat the room acoustically, so I ended up building some acoustic panels. So I just bought the wood insulation, picture hanging hooks, some L brackets, and picture hanging wire to basically just make these on my own. Fortunately, my dad came up to help, so we made 7 of these panels after we measured out the different dimensions and how deep each panel needed to be. Cutting the individual pieces of wood took some time, but because we had measured out appropriately, it all went together pretty quick after this. Drilling the pilot holes in each of the planks and then putting the screws in them, we made some frames for each of the wood panels. I made 6 2x4 panels and one panel that was a little over 3 foot by 3 foot to put over the window behind my drum set. And since that one's a little larger, we ended up putting some bracing just in the center of it. The frames went together pretty quick, so I sanded down the edges of the wood just so it wouldn't snag on any of the fabric that I was going to wrap them in. So after measuring out the fabric, I then put the insulation sheets inside the framing, flipped them over, and then stapled the fabric to the back after pulling it pretty tight so it would stay in place. For the larger square size panel that's going to be mounted over the window, I put a French cleat style hook on the top so it would be easy to remove from the window when I wasn't using it. And for the other panels, I just used picture hanging wire about 12 inches down from the top. So all the panels turned out great, and I was now ready to hang them up in the room. To hang these up, I used some gator clips to anchor these into the drywall. And I also had these corner panels from my previous studio that I hung up in the corners on the far side of the room. It's a little more dense insulation on these panels, but these really help in reducing some of the standing waves in the corner where you can get a lot of bass frequency buildup. There's a pretty large window on the far side of the room, but rather than build a panel to cover this up completely, I just bought some thicker curtains to hang over the window. That way I can open and close it as needed. It's not perfect, but I haven't gotten any huge reflections off of it, so it's working pretty well. For the 2 panels behind my desk, directly behind the studio monitors, these are actually 7 inches deep rather than the 5-inch depth of the other ones in the room. The extra thickness just means that they're going to help out in absorbing a little bit more of the low mids than the other panels in the room. Again, for the panel over the window, I wanted to be able to hang this up and remove it pretty easily, so this one had a hook. But the other panels are being hung up just using the picture hanging wire since I'm not going to be removing these from the wall frequently. So overall, I went from this to this, and I'm really happy with the results. The room sounds a lot more controlled now, especially with the cymbal reflections around the room and the snare drum. And then for mixing, the room sounds a little tighter so I can hear more accurately what I'm doing inside of the mix. All in all, the materials for these 7 acoustic panels cost just over $200, so comparatively pretty cheap from what you can buy online that's already pre-made. But the room sounds much better, and I'm having a lot of fun working on sessions and can't wait to get working on more.